I can't live.
Yes.
I can't. The outside's trying to kill me. I'm just going to sound like a frog for this entire episode. It's great.
Rabbit.
Rabbit. I don't have COVID. So we're good.
You don't have COVID.
I don't have COVID. It's allergies. I don't have COVID.
It's allergies. You're not actually dying.
No, I'm not actually dying.
Not from allergies.
Just from trees. The trees are trying to kill me.
I mean, aren't we all dying every day?
That's a little morbid.
Just a little bit.
Well, apparently my choice of death is trees right now.
Trees.
Trees.
Not even like in an exciting way. They're just gonna like make you hack along.
Pretty much. That's exactly what this feels like right now.
I mean, I guess that's better than the Final Destination way of trees killing you.
Oh God, no. No, I can't still to this day drive behind a truck that has
We were behind a vehicle with logs in it the other day when we were going to training for work, and the guy in the front seat looks at the driver, he goes, "What are you doing? Haven't you ever seen Final Destination?"
I can't. Anything. It's like a visceral reaction. I have to move my car away from any truck that has logs or something like that in the back.
I know.
I can't do it. Who are we?
I am Ash, and I am not dying by trees.
I am Elle, and I am dying by trees.
We are Lovey Cosplay.
This is still shit cosplayers say, even if I sound like Sergeant Frog right now, which is
Ribbit.
how I feel, Ribbit. Sorry, friends. We tried recording this earlier, and I sounded pretty awful, so we're like, let's redo it again. I'm worse now. We're just gonna roll with it. We'll do our best, but it's definitely not COVID. I've taken like 4 COVID tests at this point. PCRs, rapids. Feels like COVID, which explains why when I had it, I thought I had allergies. But it's not. So.
Not yet.
I mean, yes, there's a high probability that at some point with all the things we have this summer, one of us is getting it. But as of right now, no, it is not COVID.
I'm just under the impression that I've already had it and just didn't know.
That's a good assumption, probably.
Yeah, just based on lots of factors in my life and where I work mostly, and the attitudes of the people that I work with, and, you know, the fact that I have to send our executive producer out into the world on a daily basis. I feel like it's very improbable that during this entire span of like 2.5 years that I have not contracted it. I think it's much more likely that I have had it and just was so like low symptom, asymptomatic that I just didn't know.
There's high probability of that. But now the little itty bitties can get vaccinated.
Yes,
Yay!
That's new. That is super new.
Yay!
So.
In the United States, the itty bitties can get vaccinated.
Almost all of them. Not all of them quite yet, but very close.
Not under 6 months.
Right. Which you're introducing brand new vaccines like that whole first year. So
yeah. Well, and typically something like this wouldn't be available for a child under 6 months anyway, because of all the other vaccines that they have to get. So
those poor things already get enough shots.
Exactly. Like there's just no way to add another one in there with all the other shots that they already have. But yet now, unfortunately, most of the itty bitties have probably already had COVID.
At least once.
But at least this will keep them from having to have it multiple times. There's also a lot of talk about an Omicron-specific vaccine coming at the end of summer. Hopefully it's in time for Spain, because I would love to get that before we go. The United States removed their testing requirements to return to the country. So my fear of getting stuck in Spain is gone now.
And we have direct flights, so we don't have to worry about losing our luggage in between planes.
Bless you, Yomacan. We bargained, essentially, and said, we will drive to Chicago if you can get us a direct flight. And they went, okay, and they got us a direct flight. So a lot of our concerns regarding our costumes for Spain no longer really exist, because we are not as likely to have your luggage lost if you're on a direct flight. Like, it goes on the plane, it comes off the plane. Like, there's not this weird Because whenever I've lost my luggage, it's been because I've flown from the small airport by my house to another airport and then to another airport. Every time, it's always gotten lost between little airport and second airport. Hopefully this way our stuff won't get lost, which also means we probably don't need to drag around like extra carry-on suitcases, because we figured out pretty quick my wig is not fitting in one, no matter what I do. And then we went, oh yeah, the chain that runs through the wig, they're not going to let me have that on the plane.
It's contraband.
So even if I brought the whole wig on and our luggage got lost, I wouldn't be able to wear it anyway. So now we're just kind of going, do we YOLO and just hope our bags get there and pack everything really nice and make the little map? We'll do a whole video of like how we pack this. Shout out to Wigwig Cosplay for giving us lots of great suggestions for traveling internationally, since they were the team from 2019, as far as how to help prevent your things getting destroyed by TSA. Help prevent.
Help prevent.
Speaking of, something really wild has happened that I can't fathom right now. Yeah, it's so ridiculous. This
remember when we had that TikTok go viral of my Sailor Moon skit? This is worse.
This is worse. This also is a great example of how social media does not equate to quality.
No, it doesn't.
So we're redoing a lot of Judar's wig, which I will do an entire tutorial on this wig. Everybody's very curious how I've been able to make this massive wig weigh less than 10 pounds and be comfortable in all of this. So we're doing some remakes because I didn't like my original harness for this particular wig from the first time. It didn't sit close enough to my back, and it wasn't high enough, and I just didn't care for the look of it. So we have to redo at least the top 2 balls of this wig. So how this wig works, basically, is it strings like beads. The first one is going to be attached to my base wig. The second one is attached to my back. And then the rest of them just hang down on a big chain. And so it swishes and moves, and it's basically, I strung some beads. That's what this is. It's got little stoppers and all sorts of stuff in it. We're redoing them. So we were messing with the original top ball, trying to see what it would look like if we flattened a side out so that it would sit more flush to my back. And I started like moving it around, and it makes the funniest sound when you squish it.
Crunch.
It goes crunch because it's covered in Flex Bond. So the reason this wig bounces back is because the wig is covered in Flex Bond. So the balls are made of like a foam inner core. That's the foam that you use to fill like pipes with. And then stuffing. And then it's a satin ball covered in wig hair, covered in Flex Bond. So the reason it bounces back is because it's covered in Flex Bond. And we wanted to do this because in traveling, a wig like this would very easily get damaged just by being in a suitcase. You know, the hair could get messed up, like that kind of stuff. My other concern was TSA. Because TSA is not kind to things. And so if they decide to like smash and move this thing, like nothing's going to happen to it. So we were playing with it to see like how much you could smash it. And then I went, we should record this just because it's kind of entertaining. I just want to record it. We recorded like a less than 30-second clip of me smashing this wig piece. Fast forward now to what? Maybe less than like 3 weeks later? Something like that. The video on TikTok has over 100,000 views. 100,000. TikTok, why?
It's entertaining to watch.
I mean, it is. It is very interesting because it's like, oh my god, why does it do that? Like, that's so weird. So, of course, now everybody wants me to stab one and cut it open. So I'm going to.
Oh, fun.
But with the scissors, because if I use a knife, TikTok will block it. Because it will be too violent.
Too violent.
So I'll have to use the scissors to pop it open and cut it open.
What if we run over one of them? Is that too violent?
I don't know. We could try that. We have 2 that we're just gonna like trash after. So I guess if you have suggestions of what you'd like to see happen to the 2 extra pieces that we have, Judar's wig, please let us know, and we'll see if we can accommodate those requests.
This could be super entertaining.
This could totally be like how many
for
things
us and for you.
How many things can we do to these and have them survive? Do we need to like drop them off a roof
Ooh,
and see if it survives? Does it bounce back? How durable are they? Oh, it's like a test this.
Yes.
We can test how durable these wig pieces are.
Sure.
But yes, because of this,
we could see if they float.
I bet you they float.
We could find out.
We could find out.
We could go check them off the dock.
I'll have to write all these down when I edit, so we should check it off the dock and see.
We could check it off the dock. We could take it to the peak of my house and drop it off of the top of my house.
We could.
Or there's just various heights.
I mean, if you have any suggestions on what you'd like to see us try with these to see how durable they are, please let us know. But the big one was that people want us to cut them open. So I will pop one of them open.
And clearly at the end, there has to be death by fire. So
I would be afraid to light these with the flex bond on it.
We'll do it outside.
I guess we could put it in like a fire pit.
Yes.
Because you have one, don't you?
I do.
Yeah. So like when it's all done, because the stuffing and the foam is going to be super flammable.
Oh yeah. It's going to go.
It's going to go. Oh no.
We could add copper so it has pretty colors.
So then obviously we'll have to make a YouTube compilation of all of these.
Absolutely. This sounds like a great day.
This is a great day. This will be a fun thing to do once we're done missing. It'll be cathartic after all the stress we've been under trying to get everything done. All this tells me is that quality isn't necessary for TikTok. Who wants to spend hours setting up a video when we can just smash things?
Smash things.
I'm all about smashing things and finding various ways to. Maybe through this process we'll get the like feature where you can link a video to another video.
Oh.
Because we don't have that, where you can like post another video of yours in the comments of another video to like lead people to the next part.
Nice.
We don't have that, obviously, because we only have 300 followers on TikTok. So the other thing I learned is views do not equate to followers. Like at all. Not proportionately, anyway.
Sure.
Because we also have like 5,500 likes on this post. It just doesn't equate to followers on TikTok. Because TikTok is a lot harder to gain followers on now than it was when it started. When it started, it was just like super, super, super easy. And we got in a little bit too late. So our numbers are not as high as they could have been if we would have started like back when it was Musical.ly.
Apparently, though, maybe our niche needs to be that we just take crafty cosplay things and then destroy them.
So really, our channels should just be test this. The tested part of shit cosplayers. Hey. Because one of the things we talked about doing at some point when we open a Patreon is doing videos testing some of these things that people say they want to try to do that wouldn't be horribly dangerous to us.
Yes. Safety first. You gotta have your safety equipment outside. Fumes are bad.
I'm kind of all about this. This sounds really
I know.
Cosplay
Sounds
science.
Like
science.
Great plan. Science.
But we are not talking about science today.
No. We're talking about something else that blew up.
Yes. So when we posted the sandbagging episode, I mean, it just ran like wildfire.
You guys had a lot to say about this episode.
Yes. And a lot of things that we hadn't even really considered. And I think that's because we're in a different space competition-wise than the majority of competitors because we're on that higher end. Most people are going to be new. That's just how that works, right?
Curve.
Yeah, there's a curve, and we are not. We are at the end of the bell curve because we've been doing this for so long. So
old. It's because we're old.
It is because we're old. So we wanted to take some time to answer some of the questions or comment on some of the statements we frequently saw to elaborate on some areas that are related to sandbagging and what that may or may not mean. So to reiterate, sandbagging is when you are purposefully trying to take advantage of a contest in some way, shape, or form. So this could look like entering contests with the same costume when it's against the rules, entering a class lower than you should, going from contest to contest with the sole purpose of gathering money and awards with that same costume, regardless of the rules, lying about the amount of awards you had for a costume, etc.
I think the important word to focus in on there too is purposeful.
Yes.
Sandbagging, unless you just blatantly disregard all rules, sandbagging is not something that somebody does on accident.
Absolutely not. No. And purposefully ignoring the rules so that you can say you didn't see it is not an accident.
No.
Because a lot of people will say, well, I didn't see that I didn't read the rules, so therefore I didn't know. Well, you did that on purpose. Like,
yeah,
you had the opportunity to read the rules. And one of the things that we have gotten recently, I've gotten a few messages from contest runners going, what can we do to try to prevent sandbagging? And if you listen to our cheating episode, what I'm going to say is, if somebody really wants to do it, they're going to do it regardless of what you put in place. So it depends on how much effort you want to go into, because in general, people don't read the rules. So, because we also get messages a lot from contests going, what do we do? Because people constantly enter and then we find out they didn't make their costume or not enough of it. And it's like, you can clarify things as much as humanly possible, but if somebody wants to do something and they're determined enough, they're just going to do it.
The only thing that I've seen that sometimes roadblock a couple people and make them stop and actually read things or think about it are like multiple affirmations that you made that you have read and understand, or even having to answer specific questions. Like if we're talking about like a percentage actually made, like redefining that and making them enter a number or list off specific pieces, what have you, of what they did versus what they didn't do. And the other thing that I found is when you hide like really random words in the middle of your rules, in like the middle of a sentence, like 2/3 of the way down, somebody they'll be like reading through it and they'll be like, I don't know why this weird comment's here. And then they just go through and finish reading it. And then when you get to the bottom, it says, oh, by the way, there's a, word or phrase up there that you're going to need to enter in order to, finish filling out the submission form. And they're like, oh, that's why that was there. And then they have to go back through and read most of them again in order to find it.
Yeah, I do like that trick. But in the end, if they want to break the rules, they're going to break the rules.
Yeah.
But things of that nature will probably get rid of a chunk of those issues.
It'll at least help with the people that are purposefully not reading them so that they can use it as an excuse.
Yes.
But if they don't, regardless, it's just like the law. Like, I might not know that something is against the law, but if I break the law, I break the law. It's still illegal,
right,
for me to do XYZ, shouting fire in a movie theater,
right,
or whatever.
Well, one of the big things that we noticed on the different comments on different forums for our episode is that people have a really hard time understanding the difference between an opinion and a rule. So a rule is a type of fact, and a fact is information that can be verified or proven to be true or false. There's no gray area. It is true or it is false. An opinion can be someone's belief or personal judgment with which you can agree or disagree. So it's subjective. There's gray area. It's typically specific to that person's life experience. And so what we were seeing was a lot of people trying to say, like, you can't recompete with a costume. Okay, well, that's not a rule at every single contest, so that's not a fact. That's your opinion. What they do is they use absolutes to try to make it seem like a rule. So an absolute doesn't have gray area. So absolute words are like can't, never, always. Those are absolutes that people will use to try to elevate basically the power behind their opinion, to try to make it seem more objective rather than subjective.
Well, and for any of you that have listened to us talk about competition episodes, we tell you two very important things. The first one is read the rules. And like Elle said, those are going to be your absolutes. These are the things that you must follow. And the second is contact your contest coordinator for clarification on anything you don't understand. So we understand that not all rules are written well, and that not all rules are written to cover every single instance of something that might happen. But the only person whose opinion on the interpretation of those gray areas that matters is the contest coordinator. It doesn't matter if you think that it should be this way. It's who's running the contest. If they think that it should be this way, and then are probably going to write it into their rules as either a clarification or add it for next year. If it's not written in black and white, the only person who has the ability to make those calls is your coordinator.
And the only rules of a contest are the actual rules of that contest. That's it. Doesn't matter what you think. The only rules that apply are the ones for that specific contest. So then, of course, a lot of people were asking, well, why don't all cons just have the same rules? Which, on the surface, sounds great, but in practice, that's a lot harder.
Yeah, I understand the appeal where people think that this would be great because then there's no confusion. If rules are the same everywhere, then there's not a question as to whether or not something is or is not allowed. But every contest is different, and their circumstances and their demographics are different. So in practice, this just doesn't really work.
Because there are some things that you have to take into consideration. Contest size, the demographic that shows up to your contest, whether it be like a large percentage of novice versus masters. A really good example is the International Costuming Guild that has a 40-page book on different rules for contests. It is a lot. But if you applied the rules of ICG to, say, like a smaller competition, then it starts to kind of cause some issues because it doesn't match the style or the demographic of that competition. So, like, one of the big ones that stands out is that they define Masters and ICG as 9 awards. Most people don't have 9 awards. So if your Masters is 9 awards and your con is small and your contest is small, you're not going to have any Masters. So then what happens is the convention breaks their own rule that they just wrote to fill the category. And so the unwritten rule becomes, oh, but if you're already competing in Masters, you should just enter in Masters. But then the only people that know that are the people that contacted the cosplay coordinator. That's just one of the simple examples of if you have blanket rules, they're not going to work for every single contest because every single contest has a different mix of levels, a different mix of what amount of awards would be reasonable. And if you tried to apply it globally, a lot of contests would suffer because of it.
I mean, and even down to like the nitty gritty, like room space or budget. Maybe I don't have the budget for my contest to give out first, second, and third and everything, or to give out, 10 minor awards for whatever the judges want to give out awards to. It just might not be feasible. And if you've only got, like 13 people in your DinkyCon contest, that's not reasonable anyway.
Right. Exactly.
You get a trophy, and you get a trophy, and you get a trophy.
Well, and ICG does have a lot of if this, then that's.
Yes.
But
which is why it's 40 something pages.
Yeah, and you can't post a 40-page document of rules to try to cover every possible thing. So that basically what cons do is they're picking out each piece of different rules from different contests that work best for their demographic. So unfortunately, it would be great in some instances, but it's not very practical. What would be nice is if certain things were better defined.
Yeah.
It would be wonderful if cons would define novice, journeyman, and masters more than just number of awards. Or the flip side, where they don't really give you any definition, or it's like, if you feel like you want to enter in this category, do it.
And let the judges just move them around as they see fit.
Which is not fair to your judges. That's a lot of work for your judges, so don't do that.
It is.
So it would be great if cons would define their divisions more clearly as to the level of experience you're expecting, the number of awards, maybe how long you've been crafting in general. Because if you get someone who's been sewing for 20 years but has never competed, they get to enter in novice.
Depending on the con, yeah.
So it's, if the con doesn't have any experience measurement, you could just enter a novice because you've never, competed in anything, when they probably should be at least in journeyman. if they've been sewing for that long. Take that into consideration when writing your rules. Try to define what you think your division should look like based on the demographic of your contest.
Yeah, I wish that more contests would cover like a wider variety of like common questions that we see a lot. So you don't necessarily have to ask for clarification all the time. Like time extensions. Some places say, this is your time limit. Absolutely no extensions whatsoever. Some places say, yes, we'll consider an extension, but they won't tell you how long. Some places don't address it at all. So then you have to ask. Original designs on existing characters. Original characters. That's something you see quite frequently. For people that do like mixed media, but are entering into a contest where they have like the specific categories listed based off of your crafting style. Some of them don't have really good, clear definitions as far as which category you need to enter into if you're using mixed media. Like these are all like basic concepts that could be addressed without rules being cookie cutter.
So one of the comments or similar comments that we saw on a lot of these posts was people commenting that basically recompeting is just tacky and lazy. So we decided to think, what would be some good reasons to recompete with a costume?
Number one is because I want to.
Well, yeah. I mean, there are obviously financial considerations with competing. So maybe you don't have the money to make multiple costumes in a year, but you'd like to be able to do more than one contest. There's also time. So the bigger the project, the more time it typically takes. Yep. So you may not have time to make more than one costume in a year. Maybe you took your costume to a small competition and now you want to take it to a bigger one. Or maybe you want to take it to a contest in a different region of the country. For those of you that are not in the United States is massive.
Yes.
So you do have the opportunity to take your costume, hundreds of miles away.
Thousands.
Yes.
Thousands of miles.
To a completely different place and compete. Maybe it's just because you want to compete, because why does anyone compete to begin with?
Yeah. Yeah, this is one I don't quite get the thought process behind. I mean, everyone has their own reasons for why they want to compete, period. And those are going to be obviously different based on the person. But there's a lot of like time and money and effort that go into making competition pieces, especially the further in you get. And I guess I don't understand why people wouldn't want to necessarily limit that automatically just right off the bat for no reason. Because I've seen some people get pissy if you enter something and you don't win and you still recompete it later. So
that one doesn't make any sense to
me. Yeah.
Like, you didn't win. You should be able to still use it.
Yeah. It's just wild to me. Because, yeah, for example, now we have our executive producer. Like, my time and my finances for creating what I consider to be like competition worthy costumes is more limited now. That's just what it is. So, but if I want to compete more than once, it's frowned upon, depending where we go and what we do.
Right. I mean, between my job and executive producer, good luck seeing us get on a competition stage again.
Sure.
Because we can't make multiple costumes in a year. It's just not a thing. At least not costumes big enough that we would consider for most of the competitions that are considered socially acceptable for us to be at, but we'll get there.
We'll get there shortly.
Because one of the questions that we also had frequently was, where does the idea that it's unfair to enter a contest with a costume that previously won an award come from? And I also hate the word fair. It is like the most subjectively used word ever. Because in a contest, it really should just matter what was the best in the show. It shouldn't matter if this costume's won awards. It shouldn't matter if that person's won awards. It shouldn't matter if that person is a professional costumer or a new costumer. It shouldn't matter because it should just be the best thing in the show.
You mean like the literal, like, word by word definition of what a best in show is?
Yes.
Is the best thing in the show?
Yes.
That's so weird.
Winning an award at another convention doesn't give you an advantage for the next convention anyway.
No.
Because that's what a lot of people think, is because you've won an award at another con, you have some sort of advantage in the next one, and you don't.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter.
The definition of fair is in accordance with the rules or the standards. But when you're using your subjective opinion to create those rules and standards, it just kind of all falls apart.
Fair means that they followed the rules as they were written for the contest that you're attending. That's fair. That means that everybody is on the same playing field because they are all following the same rules.
So some of the statements that we saw in these forums referring to entering as not fair are really based in a bunch of preconceived ideas that people want to be social norms. So things like, they already have an award, so they don't need another one. If they won at X, their costume must be really good, so it will be so much better than everyone else. Since it's not on the same level, it shouldn't compete again. They already got to compete in that once and got something, and my costume hasn't won anything yet, so they should sit this out. They already have a bunch of awards in general, so they don't need to compete again. And my favorite, it's rude to not give someone else the opportunity to win.
Ugh. Your feelings are not the responsibility of other people.
It is not the competitor's responsibility to stop competing to give other people the opportunity to win. Oh, that one just makes me so angry because we get this thrown at us. And we don't even win that. We don't compete that often, but this gets thrown at us.
We don't compete that often.
Like, you shouldn't enter that because you guys are, we think you guys are at this level, and so you're going to block someone from their opportunity to win. That's what a competition is! Oh my god. That's how competitions work. When you enter, there are multiple people in it, and whoever does their best wins. So yes, the person who's the best is gonna block you from winning an award if you are not the best. That's it. That's how it works. Because it's not the best in except, it's the best in. It's just so infuriating.
It pains me.
It's just so frustrating because it is not my responsibility to stop competing, so you feel like you have more of an opportunity to win a higher award.
Well, and I know that we used to kind of prescribe to this where we wouldn't take things places that didn't have the reuse rule just because we're like, well, it already won this, so we don't want to take that. And I know that we've done that before because I'm thinking of one contest in particular where I actually ended up sitting out, and I'm just like, yeah, it sounds really a little silly when you break it down into these little parts. If it should be, against the rules, it needs to be in the rules and not just social rules, but actual rules. And that's what everybody should care about, but they don't.
Right. And these kind of things is what makes it really hard to even reuse a costume, even if you should be able to reuse one. Harley always comes to mind in this for me, because I've gone through talking to so many cosplay coordinators who can't get past the fact that I competed with her at C2E2, but it was not a craftsmanship contest. But they can't get past the fact that it was at C2E2. And it's like, yes, it has an award, but my craftsmanship wasn't judged. It's a performance award. So if I don't do the same performance, it's a blank slate. Why do you people not understand this? But all they see is C2E2. And it's super frustrating.
Yeah.
Because I may never get her craftsmanship judge now that I worked so very hard on because I chose to be in that contest. But, why should it matter? Even if I had competed at a Sunday contest at C2E2. It doesn't mean that my costume is better than anybody else's costume that's going to show up at this other convention, because it's all based on who shows up.
Just like everything was based on who showed up at the performance contest at C2E2 when they had their Sunday masquerade with no prejudging.
Right.
I don't know. It's the same.
This kind of comes down to the issue of, like, a lot of people have issues with big fish in a small pond kind of scenarios where a lot of people would like to say that high-level competitors, and that's what we're going to refer to, a high-level competitor as someone who has been doing this for a long time, competes in masters, has gotten multiple, like, best in show, best masters. You know, they kind of run on a little bit of a higher level. They have a few awards under their belt, that kind of thing. That high-level competitors shouldn't be allowed to compete at smaller cons because it's not fair. So someone asked a really good question, and it was, if I've won something at a larger contest, am I no longer socially allowed to compete in something smaller? Socially, what some people assume about higher level competitors is that these people are sandbagging just to get more awards when they go to a smaller competition, that the convention is small, and this person is experienced and talented, so they can't compete because it's rude to the newer cosplayers. This experienced person is going to block others from winning awards. Since they don't need to compete in smaller competitions to win awards, then they should allow someone else to win. Again, it is not the responsibility of the competitor to allow other people to win. Because in the end, you don't know why somebody chose to go to a smaller contest.
Yeah.
It's not likely that it's sandbagging for awards.
Well, and honestly, having a lot of awards, it doesn't do anything for you, like, externally. So, like, if I win an award, it gives me that like little glow up for a second because, you know, you get the feel goods. But other than that, it doesn't do anything. Like, contests don't care. Conventions who are looking for judges don't care how many awards you won. That's not a thing. People on social media don't care how many awards you won. That is not the reason why they're going to follow you on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. Like, that has nothing to do with anything.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about awards anymore. It used to matter, like, a long time ago. It does not matter anymore.
It does not matter.
Conventions, honestly, probably care more about your follower count on your social media than how many awards you've won.
But that makes sense because it's all about marketing at that point. It's a numbers game. We talked about that in one of our other episodes. Like, it doesn't matter. No. And you don't have to enter contests to be a good crafter and therefore be a good judge. And there are some people that have been competing for a long time that are terrible judges. Like, yeah. Award count doesn't matter. People do not sandbag to get more awards for shits and giggles.
No, it's just not a thing. But then why would someone who is a higher level competitor choose to compete at a smaller contest? Well, these big contests are really expensive conventions and are typically very far away. Because again, the United States is massive. So, like, you know, we're not far from Chicago. Chicago's the major metropolitan area for us. So we're about 3 to 4 hours away. And that would leave us, if we're looking at big competitions, C2E2 and Anime Central. But then if you're also supposed to not repeat competitions, you start to run out of places to go. So sometimes you just want to compete and you don't want to have to worry about how big the contest is. And location and cost makes a huge difference. We chose Anime St. Louis as our option for getting back on stage because it was inexpensive and convenient. And that literally was our criteria for that contest. And that was it. Like, we want to get back on stage before we get on stage for Spain. This is at a convenient time of the year. I can use Marriott points for the hotel. This contest is not very expensive. It's also not that far. Let's do that. And honestly, St. Louis had some really good crafters at this quote-unquote small event. So you don't know. Just because the contest is small doesn't mean that there aren't going to be other high-level people there. Maybe they just want to compete more than once a year. Because when you get pigeonholed into doing massive competitions or internationals, you can't compete more than once a year at most. Because most people, unless you do this full time, do not have the finances or the time to make high-level competition pieces more than once a year.
I don't.
Also, a lot of cosplayers have other things that they do with their non-work time than make costumes. I know.
What?
There are
That's
some
so
that
weird.
legit, like, this is all they do outside of work, and that's fine. If that's what fulfills you, you do you, but a lot of us do not do that. I don't have a lot of extra time to be making massive competition costumes.
Or the storage space for them.
Or the storage space. I mean, yes. I
Uh,
mean, I've had that conversation with multiple people, and they're like, well, are you guys ever going to do crown? And I'm like, I don't have the space in my house for a crown costume. Like, they're always massive. Or they're like, are you ever going to do, like, a big armor build? I don't have the space for a big armor build. That's why we work in fabric. Like, where would I put it? Like, I'd love to try making some armor, but I don't know where I would put that. You know, maybe they just want to go to a contest that's less stress and more fun. Competing in a small contest just to show them support. You know, they're worried about not having enough people in the contest, so you compete just to kind of, like, support the contest.
yeah, we've done that before and taken not like brand new stuff, but some older stuff. Because we didn't feel like it was socially acceptable for us to take our current things. So we pulled something out that was a couple years old.
Right. Well, and speaking of that, when a small contest offers big prizes, guess what they're trying to do?
They want the big and fancy.
They want the high-level competitors to show up, which is ultimately something that happened to us with a small contest, and then I won $500 because, like, and we were going to do it anyway, but I'm not going to say that cash wasn't a nice incentive.
Right.
Not going to say that the cash wasn't a nice incentive to decide to stay late on a Sunday at C2E2 to compete in the performance contest. Because in the end, it's good for the contest and the contest coordinator for high-level people to show up.
Yes.
It keeps the contest interesting. It makes people interested in the contest. It makes people want to know more about the contest. It makes the contest more balanced when you have both novice and higher-level competitors in your contest.
It makes more people want to attend the contest, which means that they will highly likely get better rooms, better times for the contest, a higher budget going forward, possibly like a longer time block depending on how many competitors are entering. Like, there are perks to having higher caliber people come to contests, and one of them is that it attracts more high caliber people to come to your contest.
Absolutely. Well, and one of the big ones, which we've done this before as well, or at least thought about doing this before, is sometimes to get more mileage out of your expensive costume, you take it to a smaller one and then take it to a bigger one, because usually that's allowed. In a lot of cases, because you just want to get more use out of your costume after spending so much time on it. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think that's kind of smart planning, honestly. That's using your resources wisely, you know, and choosing to go to the smaller contest first and then going to the bigger one. Because if you go to the bigger one first and you win, you have a less likelihood of being able to use it again. So if you're hoping to get mileage out of your costume, that process makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. There's definitely some circuits that we've talked about, like, over the years, as far as trends that we've noticed with people taking their costume from X to Y to Z, but you can't go backwards.
Right.
So you might have some like weird gaps in there, but it's good planning. And a lot of people will take something to a contest and get some initial mileage out of it. And even if they don't win anything, then they can take the feedback that they got from the other competitors and the judges and then turn it into something better for the big contest that they're planning on going to with it ultimately.
Well, and I guess that would be the only advantage someone has to entering a contest before going to a bigger one. So the win doesn't give you the advantage. The advantage comes from getting your costume judged and be able to ask experienced people for opinions on your costume.
Yes.
It's a smart thing to do. We have had multiple people when they're like, oh, you guys are judging, I'm going to bring this just because I want your opinion on this costume. That's the benefit, not the win. And it's smart to go get that feedback so that you can pump up your costume for the large competition.
Because where else are you going to have like somebody, probably 3 people who are presumably high-level crafters in a variety of medium to have one-on-one time looking up close at every single thing on your costume, looking for its flaws. Like, how frequently is that going to happen outside of a competition setting?
Right? I mean, my personal opinion is that's just smart. Like, it's just a smart thing to do, really. There is a side note, though, that I want to make that is in response to social norms of a community. you need to consider the intention of your actions, because there will be consequences of whatever actions that you choose. You have to decide whether or not the consequences are something you want to deal with. So I'm not saying you have to subscribe to social norms, because you don't, and we'll do an entire episode on social norms. But you need to look at if your community or friend group frowns upon a certain behavior, like going to a small con to get an easier win, gathering money, reusing a costume. You're gonna have to be prepared for the backlash that may follow, and you have to personally decide whether or not you want to deal with that.
And that is only a question that you can answer for yourself.
Because if an opinion is widely accepted enough to be a social norm in your community, you are probably going to be held to that almost like a rule in that community. A friend of ours gave us a really good example about Florida. So in the Florida community, it is very well known that you do not recompete with a costume if your costume is won Best in Show. Doesn't matter how big the con is, doesn't matter how big the contest was. This is a social norm, and all judges are expected to hold people to this social norm.
I don't like that.
I mean, it's not great, but it's something that's widely known to the point where it could almost be considered a social norm.
Well, and I don't mind the fact that that is the social norm. The part that I don't like is the fact that judges are making up rules on the fly that are not in the written rules of the contest.
Right, but that's a whole nother situation.
Yes.
But it is known because it is so widely accepted that this is going to happen. So it is up to you to decide what consequences you are willing to deal with by the behavior that you choose. It's just up to you. We talk about this in the cheating episode. Does the ends of your actions justify the means? So for me, like, if I got Best in Show to con and I knew there was a high probability that if I take this costume to another con that doesn't have a rule about recompeting and I won Best in Show and that the judges are going to block me, I'm not going to bother because it's going to be a waste of my time.
Yeah, if we can only, take the time off of work or, spend the money to attend a certain number of conventions per year, we're not going to go somewhere where we know that even though it's not against the rules, they're going to prevent us from winning anything just out of, their own personal opinions on what we should or should not do. That seems like a huge waste of everybody's time and money.
Exactly. But that kind of throws it back to a competition should be about who shows up, and that's it. Shouldn't matter about awards. It shouldn't matter about any of these things. Because when you start blocking higher level competitors from competing outside of these large competitions and internationals, it prevents us from doing this for the sake of having fun. Because sometimes we want to have fun. But what happens to us a lot, and one of the reasons we don't announce where we're competing typically, is because we'll get a lot of messages of people telling us that us being there is not fair. And that they want to drop out now because we're going to be there. Just because we're there doesn't mean we're getting an award, first of all. People have beaten us. Like...
Yep.
Yeah, like, our existence does not guarantee anything. Like, this is why there are divisions and contests. It's to make a balance between the new competitors and the experienced competitors.
Absolutely. That is literally why you divide people into categories.
But if you start putting your higher level competitors into this teeny tiny box of where they're allowed to compete, it leads to a lot of stress because of the financial strain and the pressure and the time, and then they quit.
Well, and a lot of those bigger contests too are juried. So in the same token, a lot of people like to complain about how hard it is for people to break into some of these juried contests because the same people compete every year. Well, if society is telling them that they're only allowed to compete at this one contest, then where else are they supposed to go?
Exactly, because that's why you don't see a lot of masters in general at smaller cons. Because once you've won a couple of awards, the community tends to decide that you shouldn't be competing at those size competitions anymore. And that's, as we mentioned, is bad for the contests, but it's also bad for your competitors because what happens is we all get funneled into this very small percentage of contests in our very large country. Because essentially people have made it clear that you're not welcome anywhere else. And now, granted, our experience is primarily anime conventions. I hear this is not as bad at other competition opportunities, but they like to make you feel like, unless you're going to some massive competition, you really shouldn't be there because you're too experienced. But the gatekeeping doesn't help anybody.
No.
All it does is make it really hard to participate in this small percentage of the hobby that is cosplay. Because there are not that many competitive cosplayers in the cosplay community anymore.
No.
It is not a common thing.
Percentage-wise, no.
No, it is not that common anymore because people don't make their stuff that frequently anymore. And people don't want to spend their entire Saturday of a convention that they paid for on a contest.
Absolutely.
So when you start gatekeeping all these higher level competitors, and then you're wondering where are the people to fill these contests, well, there you go. Like, that's where it's at. I've gone back and forth so many times about wanting to be done with competing because I feel a lot of pressure that I can only compete in a certain way. That I am only allowed to compete at a certain level of convention, with a certain expectation. I get very anxious if we start telling people we're competing somewhere because I don't want people to be angry. I don't want people to drop out. We've been looking at conventions where the community won't have a freaking clue who we are, so we don't have to deal with that. Because it adds a lot of stress to this process that's already kind of stressful when you compete at a higher level. But I can't afford the internationals that are left. Like, I will never be able to take enough time off for WCS. WCS is also insanely expensive. So if, because we are now Team ICL, socially, if now people are like, well, you now can only do internationals, well, I'm done competing because I can't afford any other ones. Like, maybe GCOF, but I can't afford WCS. The cost is absurd. Unfortunately, friends, you're probably never going to see us do that one, because it is absolutely insane how much time they want you to take off, and the amount of money it costs to do WCS. It's wacky. But needing to travel to compete means that we compete every 1 to 2 years. And then people are like, well, why don't you guys compete anymore? You don't want to know a surprise? We have 10 placement awards in 7 years. That's it. We don't have a billion awards like some people. We don't. Like, we don't compete very frequently because of the amount of time it takes us to make something that is at the level that I feel like we're expected to do, which I am totally all for in 2023 to start breaking that and not caring so much about
sure
what we're doing, where we're doing it, because I miss performing, and by trying to hold myself to this social norm standard that really isn't achievable, I am no longer having fun. So we're hoping to bring the fun back by going where we want to go.
And doing what we want to do.
Yeah, not worrying so much if this contest is big enough, or if this is the right thing for this contest, or, if we do this, are we gonna win something? Like, I want to go back to doing really stupid shit like we used to do.
Or we're like, it would be really fun to do. Let's do that.
Yes, I miss that. I miss this would be hysterical to do with my friends. Can we please do this? And not worrying about whether or not it's going to be the thing that we are expected to do by the community, given the standard the community has put us at, which I don't even know what it is, but it's there. Because I just want to have fun, and I would like to say that the community doesn't want to see good talent stop competing, but I'm not so sure. I think there are probably people in the community who would love all the higher level people to stop competing so they could win more awards. In the end, it should be fun, and if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?
To circle back to something that we talked about a little bit earlier, if all of your quote-unquote high-level people stop competing, first of all, anybody that was on the fence about thinking about competing, if they're seeing all these people that maybe they followed on, social media, or they've seen at cons and contests, and are like, hey, why aren't you competing anymore? And they're like, it's just not fun for me, then that might bar them from wanting to try it out and not introduce new blood into the circuit. If you have people stop competing, then your contests are going to get downgraded in the eyes of the convention. They're going to lose their prime time. They're going to lose the spaces that are available to them on a permanent basis. They are going to lose their funding. I mean, gatekeeping hurts everybody, not just the people that you're trying to keep out.
We do this all the time where it's like, oh, we made this costume, but that costume's not what we consider competition levels, so we're not going to use it. Like, why not? Why isn't it? We didn't consider, we're so used to making these massive projects. We were not considering Wicked Lady and Mistress 9 competition worthy. But they are. Like, they were, but to us, we now have this weird, like, mega standard in our head of what it means to make a competition costume. And I think for me personally, I think I need to redefine that for myself to gain some more fun back and not feel so much pressure to make what we've defined as a competition worthy piece. And that's definitely something I would like to explore after we're done with internationals and kind of play with that a little bit and be like, what does it really mean to compete? Like, redefine what competing means for myself.
And when we figure that out, we will give you an update.
Yes.
Yes.
2023 is going to be a lot of flying by the seat of our pants.
Yeah.
We're not really, it's YOLO, basically, is 2023. Yeah. The theme of 2023 is YOLO.
I like it.
Like, we're just going to throw, what we like to say, throw darts all over the place and see what sticks, and we're going to go from there.
There is no plan.
Yeah, it makes me anxious no plan. Because there is no plan, but it also makes me excited because there is no plan.
And I think we need to feed off of that excitement.
Yes, because for almost 3 years, everything has been anchored around going to ICL, which we're very, very grateful to be going to ICL. But it would be nice to be able to have a little bit more freedom in our plan.
So we're going to do a complete 180.
So we're going to do a 180 from what we've never done this before, where we're just gonna throw darts at a lot of different opportunities and see what
happens. Yeah.
If there is somewhere you would like to see us, please let us know.
Yeah.
Also, please let that event know.
I am really bad at darts, but if you would like to tell us where you would like us to throw the darts at, we can try.
Can we actually put convention names on a dartboard and throw darts?
Yes,
can we do that?
Let's do it.
Please do that. Okay.
I mean, I have darts
send us your favorite conventions and we'll try to narrow them down and we will throw darts at a dartboard and see what we're going to try to shoot for. I mean, frankly, we're probably just going to apply to all of them and see what happens, but we would
the dartboard's way more fun, though.
Dart sounds way more fun as to what order we attempt this at. Please let us know what your favorite events are. We are open to comic, video games, role play, anime, any type of fandom geek, podcast, music, events. We're looking at one on the East Coast that is a gaming/music event that we'd like to try out at some point because it just sounds cool.
It just sounds fun.
And that's kind of what we're doing. We're just like, this just sounds really interesting. I want to go there and see what this is like. Just feeling it out and seeing what these things are like and what these different types of events. I'd love to try a tabletop gaming convention.
Yeah. Gaming cons are super fun. So yeah, let us know what you like. And if there is gaming or podcasting or cosplay or multiple combinations thereof, it'll probably make the list.
Yes, especially if they do some special things with podcasts. That's definitely a plus in our book if they have a podcast area or have support for live shows and live recordings and things of that nature. That's always a big bonus. I'm really sad that C2, it doesn't look like they're bringing back their podcast area.
That is a bucket list item, is that at some point, in addition to recording with Hello from the Magic Tavern being on my bucket list, I would love to do the podcast booth that Chocolate Comics does.
Yes, but unfortunately it's going to be at Fan Expo, I think, this year and not C2. And we can't go to Fan Expo because that's too many damn cons in 1 month.
Well, it's also the weekend before Anime Iowa, which we are contractually obligated to go to.
Yeah, that's too many damn cons. I can't go to Fan Expo, go to AI, take a weekend off, and go to C2. Plus, with COVID, you can't do back-to-back cons anymore anyway.
Right.
Because you need 14 days in between to make sure that you're, over COVID before you can go to your next event. There's no back-to-back cons in probably the foreseeable future. So that will be one of the things that trips us up with 2023 is that if the conventions are too close together, we won't be able to do them because you have to have that gap to make sure that you're past the 10 days of COVID from your exposure date.
On the first day of COVID.
The song that was running through my head earlier was Everything is COVID.
I had Girls Just Want to Have Fun in my head several times during this episode.
Everything is COVID when you're in a pandemic. Everything is COVID. So I hope we were able to answer some of your questions in regards to sandbagging.
Yes. If you have more questions or more comments, I will say a lot of people on the comment threads did a TLDL, too long didn't listen, because you could tell by some of the things they were saying that they didn't actually listen to what we had to say about it before chiming in, but that's fine. It's going to happen. So if you have any extra comments, questions, concerns about anything we talked to this episode, last sandbagging episode, etc., please let us know. Podcastscs@gmail.com is the email, or you can DM us at Lavi Cosplay.
If you would like us to consider doing a live on this topic on our Twitch, please also let us know.
Oh, yeah. That's another great place for follow-ups.
Yeah, we could answer your questions live and in prime time. We haven't done one of those for a long time.
Like we kind of talked about a little bit earlier. And if we didn't, we might have talked about it during our last recording that we had to scrap. We are working on a more fact versus opinion based episode, as well as social norms and the development of social norms for either later this season or sometime next season. So stay tuned.
There's a good chance that our friend Dr. Eric will be back at some point because he had an excellent suggestion for an episode on narcissism after listening to the cheating episode, which airs a lot of narcissism in the fandom and geek community. So that will probably be something we'll address in season 3 or in season 4. God, we're in 3. It's hard for me to believe that we're like halfway through our 3rd season already.
I know, isn't it crazy?
We are extremely close to 15,000 downloads.
We might have hit it by the time this episode airs.
We probably have by the time this episode airs.
So, yay!
So thank you again,
everyone!
Everyone for sticking with us. That is a massive number for our small niche every other week podcast.
Yes, we are very thankful for all of you.
Yes. But with that, I think we're going to sign off.
Yep. I'm Ash.
I'm Elle.
We are Lavi Cosplay.
And this was Shit Cosplayers Say. You've been listening to Shit Cosplayers Say, an LVC production. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Podcast SCS. Our website is lavicosplay.com. Have a fun, crazy con or cosplay-related story, absurd cosplay question, or just something in general to share with us? Email us at podcastscs@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and remember, just because you can doesn't mean you should.